Hello, YouTube! I am Pinstar, and this is Oxygen Not Included Strategy and Tactics, Episode 0. So, normally today would be another episode of Theme Hospital. However, due to some water damage and flooding in the basement, my normal computer is inaccessible. Don't worry, it's fine. I just can't get to it, and therefore can't get to the save files on it, and therefore can't record on it, so I'm recording on my wife's computer. So let's do an episode 0 for Oxygen Not Included. This is going to be my next series coming up after Theme Hospital concludes. Right then. So today, for our episode 0, I'm going to get into, well, the very first set of decisions that you have to make in Oxygen Not Included. When starting up a new game, who are your first 3 duplicants going to be? What parameters make them good? What makes them bad? What should you start off with? You see, there's a lot of variables, and being that these 3 dupes are going to be your very first trio here, and therefore going to be with your colony for, well, hopefully, a fairly long time, you need to be careful about what you decide, because what they bring to the party, what they bring to your colony, will have a larger effect than duplicates that come later on. Especially because they can determine how quickly and how efficiently you can get your initial setup going. So then, one of the other reasons why picking and carefully choosing your first 3 duplicates is this shuffle button. Normally during the game, when you get presented with the opportunity to create a new duplicate, you are given a choice of 3 different types. But if you don't like all 3 or any of those 3, you need to basically reshuffle them. You have to wait a while before you get a chance to choose from another 3. Here, there's no limit to the number of times you can hit the shuffle button, so you can afford to be as picky as you want. Right then, so let's take a look at our options here. What makes up a duplicate, and what things are good, and what things might not be so bad. So all duplicates have these skills available to them. Which ones they actually come with will be randomly determined, both by just random chance and also by any traits they might have. Also, all starting duplicates will have exactly 1 good trait and 1 bad trait. Now, the additional information here, the other variable is the stress response. There are 4 of them: Vomiter, Destructive, Binge Eater, and, not pictured here, Ugly Crier. Now, the other bits of information here, the decor expectation and the food quality, as you can see by mousing over, these are actually calculated based on the other stats of the duplicate. So it's their stats that determine this, not random chance from these traits alone. So let's talk attributes. So each of these attributes does a different thing. However, their usefulness to you as the colony manager here will vary, especially being that this is the first trio of duplicates. So let's run down the list, shall we? Now, athletics is a solid trait. It determines a duplicate's movement speed. At 0 athletics, they move at normal speed. As athletics goes up, their running speed or movement speed goes up and up and up as well. Them being able to get from point A to point B faster will allow them to do just about everything faster, because unless they're in a profession where they just sit at a station all day and do nothing but work that station, like a dedicated hamster wheel runner or a researcher, you know, athletics is really good, especially for your miners and constructors, because they're going to be running all over creation, running to these blocks, mining them out, building stuff there, running here, getting materials, bringing it to construction, building it. So athletics is not a bad thing to go for. Cooking. Every base needs a good cook. And when I say that, I mean every base needs a good cook, in singular. If you happen to come across a duplicate with a high cooking skill, that's not a bad thing, but more than one is a little bit wasteful. And even then, you don't necessarily need one right off the bat, so I'm not going to re-roll just to guarantee myself cooking. Digging. Now, digging can give you a real boost in the early game. Having them dig out faster will allow you to get your colony established a lot quicker. It also aids in exploration. If you're sending these duplicants on far-flung missions to other biomes to try and secure some rare and unique resources, a fast digging speed will let them make progress all the faster. That being said, digging skill is, well, it trains up pretty quickly naturally, especially if they have a high learning skill. So it's not necessarily that you need to have someone with high digging. If I were to start the game with 3 people with a 0 digging skill, I would not consider that necessarily a bad start, because there's other things that eclipse digging in the grand scheme of things. Now, medicine. I can tell you right now, medicine at the moment is not that very useful. Yes, it improves their resistance to disease and injury, but disease isn't that common, and it's not that debilitating, and injury is also not that common and also not that debilitating. Now, that being said, I have a feeling like this update that just hit here, this is the agricultural update. It really fleshed out and added complexity to food production. Now, the agricultural tiles mention being able to grow medicine. We can't yet. That is not in the game. There is no medicines to produce, really. That we have to worry too much about. But I have a feeling in a future content update, the medicine skill will be a lot more useful. But right now, ignore it. Tinkering's another one of those skills where, yeah, it impacts some things and makes things a little bit more efficient, but you can really live without it. You don't need to sacrifice someone just to try and get a high tinkering stat. Construction, very useful. Construction and digging pair nicely. If you have someone with, say, construction, digging, and, say, a little bit of athletics, they are going to expand your base quickly. And that might be a worthwhile person to roll for. That being said, like digging, it is built quite naturally. Now, creativity. Creativity is a lot like cooking. You only really need one. But the one that you have, you're going to want it to be high. Specifically, when creativity you might as well shoot for a 5 or higher creativity, or no creativity. 1 through 4, it might as well be 0, because they still have a chance of making bad paintings and bad sculptures. With someone with a 5 or higher creativity, they have a much greater chance of having pristine artwork, which really helps the stress reduction aura and the appearance of it around the base. But like I said, you only really need one of these people, so yeah, don't kill yourself for more than one. Now, that brings us to the 2 stats that I think are the most powerful of all the stats here: learning and strength. And they are quite different in how they play out, but they are both extremely powerful. If I had to say what are a couple of the most powerful stats in the game, it is not any of the ones I just mentioned. It is learning or strength. Now, let's talk about these individually. Now, learning not only determines your researching skill per speed, but also determines how quickly all of your other skills level. So a high learning will mean that you'll become very good at whatever else your dupe happens to be doing other than research. And that can make them extremely skilled and extremely quickly. Not to mention, the only way to build learning is to do research. And when you've finished researching all of your projects, then it is impossible to raise the learning stat. Therefore, starting with a higher learning stat is probably the best way to ensure that you have someone with it. Now, you might say, well, Pinstar, if learning determines everything else, if learning can basically get you any of the other skills that you want, why isn't that the categorically best stat in the game? Shouldn't we just keep rolling till we all get a bunch of geniuses? And I say, no! No! Absolutely not. Because learning has a danger to it. Learning is a risky skill to have for a dupe. Here's the reason why. If we look down here at both decor expectation and food quality expectation here, we can see that a lot of these are determined by their highest level profession. So in this case, Rowan here's highest level is only a 1. So that's only adding 5. So his decor expectation's -20. He doesn't care what the hell the place looks like. He's going to be content with eating whatever. He's going to be content with being in crappy environments. Now we flip over here to, say, Frankie, whose highest profession level is 6. We can now see that 6 is making them desire at least a 5 decor, and also they're slightly more picky at a -2 food expectation. Now here's the problem with a high learning skilled person. They can very quickly rocket up one of their professions, especially if they're doing it a lot. That means that their highest level profession will grow quickly. And as their highest level profession grows quickly, their decor expectation grows quickly, their food quality expectations grow quickly, and if you cannot keep up with them, they will become stressed. Really, really stressed. Really skilled, but a ball of stress. Yes, learning makes your dupes more prone to stress if you can't keep up with them. And being that these are the beginning level characters and you won't necessarily have access to the top tier methods for maintaining stress and producing higher quality food, a high learning dupe as one of your initial ones can be really dangerous. Really dangerous. Now, the other big one is strength. Now, on the surface, strength seems like it is a fairly pedestrian stat. It determines carrying weight. How much can your dupe carry at once? And yeah, it might not seem like much, but it actually has some hidden bonuses and benefits to it. Here's the reason why. First off, cleaning up your base. That is, sweeping all the minerals and stuff that are just sitting on the floor is probably, in the early game, the most powerful way to raise your decor. More so than waiting on paintings and whatnot. Because often your whole base is just horrible decor just because you've been doing so much digging and the whole place is littered with rocks and all over the place. A high strength person can clean that up faster. Not to mention, when you have cases of things that need deliveries, algae terrariums that need water, or your nutrient musher needs materials or water delivered to it, the strength of a character will allow them to pick up more materials and deliver more in one trip, therefore making them more efficient. The last reason why I really like taking strength here is that strength is the only attribute that cannot level up. There is no activity, including the act of just picking stuff up and carrying it around, that will gain you level ups in strength. Whatever strength a person is when they are created, that is their strength for the whole game. So the only way to have a high strength person is to have them start with a high strength. So what I would actually recommend is higher strength characters with maybe one higher learning character. All of the other skills will take care of themselves, or in the case of cooking and creativity, you can recruit for them. Now then, let's take a look at traits, because there are some good traits that are really good. There are some good traits that are meh. There are some bad traits that are really bad, and there are bad traits that are like, that's not really that bad. So let's take a look at the ones that we're looking at right now. Naturally robust. Duplicants, a hardy immune system, repels most common illnesses. At the moment, not really that important. It might make them good for an explorer to send them out into the odd biomes, because they're going to be facing higher or lower temperatures. They're going to be exposed to polluted oxygen and polluted water. That might enable them to be a little bit better at that, but really you don't need it. It's okay to have. Irritable bowel, not really that bad. You might need slightly more in the way of toilets, and it slows them down because they're sitting on the toilet a little bit longer, but honestly, the take a little bit longer to do their business doesn't really have enough of a negative impact to make this one a really, really bad one. It wouldn't be something that I would turn a dupe down just because they had that trait. Alright, now Frankie here has examples of two fairly common types of traits. So on the positive side, Grease Monkey, every single attribute has a trait that gives it +5. Which is all well and good. The only problem is that it factors this bonus into their highest level profession. Now in the case of Frankie, that's not so bad, because his highest level profession is already +6. So getting this extra +5 in tinkering doesn't actually spike his decor expectation or food quality expectations. It just lets them be the way they are. But let's say, for example, we had a +6 strength and we had the buff trait, which gives you a +5 strength. You'd be at 11, which would be really awesome, except that their starting decor expectations would be sky high, and they would be stressing out almost immediately. On the flip side, the different phobias will lock out any actions related to one specific skill, and they have one for some of them they'll lock out actions, others they'll give a natural negative. In the case of gastrophobia, it just completely locks out cooking. For things like athletics or strength or learning, it doesn't eliminate their ability to do things with that. It just gives them a penalty. Now, an interesting note. Let me see if I can. Oh, there we are. So, slow learner. Slow learner gives you a -3 on learning. This not only, this will obviously make them a terrible researcher, but it also slows down their skill leveling considerably. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Mainly because they're still over time going to be building that up, and it slows the progression of their decor expectation and food quality, meaning you can get more work out of the duplicant without them starting to demand more and more stuff and getting stressed when you don't provide it. So slow learners, as long as everybody's not a slow learner, you do need one person to do the research. As long as you're not having them research, that's not a bad thing. Early bird, +2. This one I like. +2 to all skills in the morning, but it doesn't spike their decor expectations. Yeah, their bonuses go away at nighttime, but who cares? They're getting basically, when you factor all even out, essentially a +1 to all skills without it affecting the decor expectation, and that's big. So early bird's not a bad one. Iron Gut's not bad. It allows you to feed them mush bars without the diarrhea chance. That's pretty much the only food that gives illnesses, so they can just chomp those without worry, which is a nice bonus. There are better ones, but it's certainly not a bad one. Biohazard, just like with naturally robust, the disease system is not so aggressive at the moment that biohazard would make it a poor choice. I wouldn't mind that. Let's continue flipping through. So interior decorator. This would be the one positive trait that I would say is actually bad. And it's not because I don't value creativity. You do still want somebody with a 5 or higher creativity, but for the love of Pete, don't take an interior decorator because it artificially inflates their decor expectation by 5 higher, and that's 5 higher than they would normally have their decor expectation given their starting stats. Narcoleptic. This one seems fairly common. It's not harmful, it's just annoying. Because they'll literally fall asleep in the middle of doing whatever the heck they were doing. And if they're, say, running the hamster wheel and you're needing that power to go on, yeah, it can be pretty annoying. But at least they're smart enough to get to not fall asleep in like a pool of water and just drown. They know to get out of the way before they're about to pass out. So it's okay to have. I prefer not having it, though. Bottomless stomach. Avoid. Avoid. Anyone who consumes more food is not someone you want in your base. There is literally, it's one of the worst of the negatives. So avoid bottomless stomach. Amphibious. Not bad, but honestly, duplicants don't go in the water often enough, and they're not moving around in the water often enough to really see this trait shine. I mean, yeah, you could engineer it so that there's, you know, a watery biome or, you know, the slime biome, and they gotta set stuff up underwater and pumps and whatnot, but even then, they're just gonna climb a few steps down a ladder and then sit there to build the thing, and Amphibious doesn't boost their build speed underwater, just their movement speed. So, meh. Decidedly meh. Oh, swallow bladder? Not that bad, actually. They make more frequent trips to the potty, but being that their output at the toilet is useful to you, that's not all that bad, actually. Now we're talking diver's lungs. Diver's lungs, I would say, is probably the best trait to have on the positive side. Not only does it make them consume less oxygen overall, meaning that you can keep your colony breathing with fewer oxygen providers, and having them put a little bit less strain on the system to keep everyone breathing well, but there's another hidden benefit to this. When a dupe is digging or doing work in an area that just naturally doesn't have enough oxygen for them to breathe properly, maybe it's a CO2 pocket or a chlorine gas pocket, or maybe they're doing stuff underwater. In any event, they know how to hold their breath. And you know, they can work for a little while they're holding their breath, but once their breath gets down to a certain level, they will abandon their task and go seek fresh air. A diver's lungs dupe will be able to continue working for longer before they abandon their task to get a breath of fresh air. So that actually makes them more efficient when you're digging in hostile regions. So for that reason, diver's lungs is probably the best trait in the game, positive trait in the game. Now, let's see. Loud sleeper. I actually don't mind loud sleeper at all. The only thing it forces you to do is to be careful with your bed assignments for that duplicant so that they're not sleeping next to other people within earshot of their snoring. But honestly, that's not that bad of a detriment. I mean, I like to build my cots separated anyway, so in essence, it's taking up the negative trait slot with something that's not actually harmful. So, loud sleeper, go for it. Let's see. There's one more I wanted. Scaredy cat. Another one. Can't perform combat. Combat is so rare at the moment that this is a non-negative. Almost everybody else in the colony will be able to fight if something needs to be fought. And otherwise this doesn't cause any other negatives, so it's a really good negative trait to have in that it doesn't cause you much harm. Alright, where's our this flatulence. So a flatulent dupe will occasionally rip a fart and be doing it fairly constantly. And the problem with that is it actually produces pockets of natural gas that pollute the air of your base, and you can't. It's difficult to filter it out efficiently because they certainly don't make enough to make useful quantities of it. They just make enough to make it annoying. And being that the air purifiers no longer scrub out duplicant farts, it just causes problems. So I would avoid flatulence. That's one of the worst ones for me. Not to mention, if they fart while they're next to other people, they will all stop what they're doing, do the "oh god they farted" emote, and then finally go back to work. But if everyone's digging in a concentrated area, that's going to slow things down. All right, where's the last one that I've been looking for? Come on. Come on. Where are you? Of course, it never shows up for me now. Ah, here it is. Mouth breather. Now, mouth breathers, it is the polar opposite, and it's also 4 times more potent as a negative than diver's lungs. It uses, it makes the dupe use 4 times more oxygen than normal, and that's really, really bad in the early game. However, it is not a categorically bad trait overall. Later in the game, when you have tons and tons of electrolyzers set up and you're making yourself a lot of oxygen, this is actually a good one to have because it lets you cycle your air more and get more goodies available into the base, and therefore produce more hydrogen, which can be burned for fuel. So mouth breather is not permanently a horrible trait, but for your first 3 duplicants, you'll want to avoid them. Now, as far as the stress responses, I don't really pay too much attention to these. Not because that they're not important, but because the way I play, I try to avoid my dupes getting stressed in the first place. And if a dupe never hits 100% stress, then they're never going to fire their stress response. Therefore, what their stress response is a non-issue. So, while yes, there are some stress responses that are better than others, binge eater is particularly horrible because they will just devour tons and tons of food, which can cause more problems for the rest of your colony. I will not reject a duplicant just because they have, say, binge eater or vomiter over one of the more pedestrian ones like ugly crier. Just because I just will be more adamant about keeping that duplicant stress-free. And as you've noticed throughout this episode, I certainly have been harping on keeping that decor expectation low. Oh, and speaking of keeping that decor expectation low, this, uncultured. This is an interesting one in that it actually gives you a small penalty in that they refuse to do the job art, but honestly, again, unless they are highly creative, the fact that they can't do art is not a bad thing. In response, their decor expectation is 20 points lower than it normally would be. That's wonderful. I mean, like, look at this person right here. Normally this would be pretty darn dangerous. 7 learning, 70% faster skill learning. So they would be a darn fine researcher, and they would be gaining skills left and right, but because of uncultured, their decor expectation is knocked down lower than they normally would be, So right off the bat, them demanding high levels of decor isn't going to be a problem. So you can get your base's tech level up to the point where you can actually satisfy their decor and food expectations by the time their skills start spiking into higher levels and overcoming the uncultured ones. So yeah, this dupe right here, I would totally start this with our strategy and tactics. Now, am I going to start the game right now? No. No. This is just an episode 0 covering, I just noticed they all have the same animation. Just covering the logic and the strategy behind picking your initial 3 duplicates. One other thing I wanted to remind you, I do have a Patreon page. If you are a contributor at the $10 level or higher, you can get your name in the various games that I play, and that does include my strategy and tactics series. We already have one eager volunteer for their name, but if anybody else is interested in both supporting my channel and also getting to name one of the duplicates, possibly one of the founding duplicates, go ahead and check out my Patreon page. The link is down below in the description. And if you sign up before I start recording, I will be more than happy to add your name to one of the duplicates. So I hope you guys enjoyed this getting started guide. Once again, this series will start proper once I finish up my my Theme Hospital series. In the meantime, I am continuing to perfect and practice different strategies for this game, so I will come to the table fully armed and operational with hints and tips ready to go. So guys, if you like this episode and you want to see more like it, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and leave me a comment, good, bad, or indifferent. Your feedback's always welcome. So until next time, this has been Pinstar signing out. See ya.